William Hill is a lifelong New York self-declared adventurer, sportsman, writer, and outdoor enthusiast. He's from Edwards, and he's been working on this hiking the trail to yesterday project for a number of years. He has a blog and a Facebook page with the same title. So if you'd like more information after the talk, in addition to what's in the book, you can check him out online. And through the process of creating the blog and writing these books, he's delved into the local history of the North Country and the Adirondacks. Whether you're an outdoor recreationist or an armchair local history lover, or both, as some of us like to think of ourselves, Bill's writing is very accessible and it will offer something for you. So again, we do have copies of the books available. He'll be talking about a lot of the things in them today. So we are very honored to welcome Bill Hill.
Well, thanks for everybody for giving up part of your day on a beautiful day like this to come and listen to me yap. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do, kind of just an overview of it all. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on anything specific, but these are my two books, volume 1 and 2. They're all local. The furthest out in volume 2, there is some in the Tupper Lake area, but still around the St. Lawrence County. Those are available at plenty of places, including here. Also, I have them on eBay, so you can order them right to have them shipped to your house. This is my blog. It's pretty simple. Just click on the tabs and whatnot. So like this would be a sample page when you get there to Giant's Landing. You're going to have a Google map link, history of it, getting there, which would be how to find the trailhead and stuff, which on a lot of these is problematic. You know, I found that myself. I want to hike this trail, but can't find where it starts. So I've tried to iron those out. What to expect on the trail, and then some of the references and sources if you want to dig deeper. These are some of the kind of pictures. I always try and have the color of the trail markers on there, so you've got that. This is some of the historical fire tower. That's Cap Mountain. This, in the lower right corner, is the one of the original caretakers' cabins. So you'll see stuff like this. There'll be plenty of modern pictures. This is my Facebook page, same title. This one is more fluid. This kind of keeps up with what I'm doing day to day or week to week. Versus the other one is kind of like a static, more like a reference. I also do some freelance work for the Adirondack Explorer. That's been kind of fun. I reach a.
I'm just moving this so they can see it.
Okay. But I've done some work with Adirondack Explorer that gets me into some new faces and places. And this is the St. Lawrence County Trails, which is a real nice tool for people. I was there from the inception of this. It gives you an interactive map. You can choose from hiking, snowshoeing, kayaking, whatever. Zoom in on the trail, click on it. It's going to give you the maps. It's going to give you some pictures. So it's a very handy thing to have, and it's all St. Lawrence County centric. So one of the things I've dealt a lot with is the fire towers. There were 7 towers in St. Lawrence County, but 8 sites. Mount Arab is still standing. That's about a mile hike up to that. Cathedral Rock is in Wanakina on the Ranger School. But that one kind of double dips because that one was on the Tulipon Mountain originally. And when the state did away with the fire towers, it was donated to the college, where it sat in a pile for about 20 odd years. And then finally, some guys got together and decided this needed to happen. So they've restored the tower, and that's there. Catamount in Colton, White Hill in Hopkinton, which was interesting. When I was researching that, I talked to some different people. I was looking up stuff, and very little information on that and the Sand Hill, both of those. They were later ones. They came in the 50s. So I'm knocking on doors and talking to people about White Hill. And everybody's bragging to me that I talked to that they had chosen that spot for that tower because it's the highest point in St. Lawrence County. So everybody in Parrishville was pretty proud of this. As I researched it, I find that it's the 60th highest point in St. Lawrence County and is in Hopkinton, not Parrishville. So, you know, when you're doing this stuff, you've got to fact check everything because, you know, in the course of years, and I don't think people do this maliciously, they just, that's what somebody told them, and it just goes that way. Yeah, I found stuff on the DEC site that I've found that's off by 10 years or whatever. So, and I don't say I'm perfect. I do the best I can to fact check stuff, but you know, I wasn't there 100 years ago, so I'm relying on what I can find. One of the tools I've used, and I talked to Carlene, there's one left. They have about 40 or 50 years of the quarterly on CDs. And that's been a great tool when you want to step back in time. So that's, and she has one left. So if anybody's interested in that, today'd be the day.
Excuse me, we'll get it now.
Then you better run. Sand Hill in Messina is literally 50 feet off the road. All that's left there is the foundation. That one was never manned. They just would use that in dry spells and stuff when they thought there was a possibility of a fire. It looked off towards Brazier Falls and in that area. The Civil Air Patrol used it more than the fire control did. Moosehead Mountain in Childwold, that's long gone. And on the next slide, I'll show you where that's at now. And Cat Mountain on Cranberry Lake, which it's a good hike back in there. You're probably about a 12-mile hike, but that's, you're right in the heart of the Five Ponds Wilderness. And that's, if you're up for that kind of hike, that's one to really enjoy. This is the Cathedral Rock Tower as it stands now on the Ranger School campus. That's a picture of it when it was on the Tully Pond Road, and this is one of the first shacks, for lack of a better term, that the caretaker stayed in. Notice a big old gramophone over there, so they had some entertainment. Catamount, which is, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Catamount Lounge or Lodge on 56. This is behind that. And that, the one on the right, or yes, on the right, that was the original tower, which would have been one of Colvin's signal towers for when they were doing survey work. And many of the fire towers started from these either locations or from the actual wooden towers. This is the White Hill Tower. That's not in Parrishville, despite what people might want to tell you. That was manned very little. And the observer's cabin is now at the Trout Lake field office. They moved that. That was the only site that I couldn't actually visit. That's on private property. And I called, left messages, mailed letters and stuff. Really wanted to get there to see the foundations. I never got a reply. I have a friend that's a retired forest ranger. He gave me some pictures of the footers, so I know what it looks like. And if I was a trespassing kind of guy, it's literally 100 feet off the road. I'm sure I could have run through the brush and back out without knowing it, but that's not my thing. This is the Sand Hill one in Messina. Those are the footers, which is all that's left. And I've dealt with some organizations that specialize in fire towers and stuff. And I think that's the only known picture of the tower. This is Moosehead Mountain, which is just probably 2 or 3 miles from CB's Corners as you go towards Tupper Lake. This one is kind of unique because of these concrete footers. No one seems to know why they're like that. It was the only state tower that had, they're about 4 foot tall. All the other towers are maybe a foot and a half. That was phased out with the rest of them and dismantled. And is now in Brooklyn. There was a industrial complex bought it, and they wanted to have a very nice green space, open space for everybody. And so the tower is lit up year round. And as you can see there, it's the only fire tower with a view of the Statue of Liberty. So it is great that most of these towers, even though they were dismantled, most of them found a home someplace. And this is Cat Mountain. That would have been one of the original survey towers. You could kind of see with the stone and stuff that they were built right in the same location. You know, so it's kind of neat to see those like 100 years apart, the difference of them. But that, like I said before, that's a 11 to 12 mile hike, but it's well worth it if you're up to that kind of hike.
Is that round trip?
Yes. Yeah, I always, whenever I stay, I think it's round trip because you got to come back. You might want to stay there, but sometime you've got to come back. Railroads enter into what I do a lot. There was a combination of private railroads and commercial railroads. The Grass River Railroad was kind of a hybrid of both. It was put in by the loggers, but it also did do some people traffic too. But the trail into Genetic's Landing, into High Falls, and across the Massweepy Mire, these are all trails, but they're the old railroad beds. Up to Horseshoe Lake, which is in Colton mostly, but it's a roundabout thing. You've got to go into Tupper Lake and come back around the back side of it, and you actually enter back into St. Lawrence County. The Lowe family, they had railroads, 2 different gauges that they used for lumbering and stuff, but they also used it in their maple syrup production, which is what they're doing here. They would gather with that and bring the sap back to the sugar houses. The G&O, which is the Governor in Oswegatchie, that has the Edwards Nature Trail runs across that, and that gets a lot of traffic. That's a very nice one. Post and Henderson was out of Star Lake and Benson Mines area. Little Otter Pond Trail, the Buck Pond, and Tamarack Creek are all pieces of these lost railroads. The Carthage and Adirondack runs through Streeter Lake, the Maple Hill area, and then the Scuttle Hole and Round Lake, which is around Calura and Jayville in Pickering. This is on the Massweepy Mire. This is the Grass River Railroad. Those are the original tracks from 100 years ago. Goes right through the middle of the mire, which is the largest non-ocean, so freshwater, bog in New York State. And the railroad track goes right through the middle of it, which if you step 4 feet off that, you're probably going to go to your waist in muck. Yes. And it's a pretty amazing thing. It's about 9 miles one way. When we did it, we had somebody drop us off and left our car at the other end. But it's pretty deep wilderness, but it's wonderful. Never seen a moose there, but I've always seen moose tracks. So they're there. This is it in Nepal because the mire has just covered with spruce and tamarack. Of course, the tamarack are large. They turn colors just like the leaves do in the fall. And just an amazing place to go through. And it's also home to Canada jay, which if you're a bird person, they're not rare, but you just don't see them a lot. You've got to be where they are because they've got a very specific boreal habitat that they want to stay in. And they're a very friendly bird. They get around people, they're a little too friendly. Like one of the nicknames is camp robbers. Because if you tag 2 or 3 days around where they are, they'll just come in and start stealing stuff. I guess they figure they were there first, so you owe them tribute. But the rivers that I concern myself with a lot, the Oswegatchie, the Grass, the Bog River, and the Racket River. Although they're all Adirondack rivers, they are just very, very different from each other. They just have their own personality. I grew up on the Oswegatchie, so I kind of favor that, but I still love the rest of them. And this is on the way to High Rock, which ends up, I don't know really how, but at least once a year I do this, if not twice. But it seems like it's my last kayak of the year, and I go up to High Rock on Columbus Day Monday. Hardly ever see anybody up there, but that's okay too. Rivers played an important role in the development of the community. Besides the obvious source of household water, it was a power source. And most any of the old towns around you go to, you'll see the majority of it, the old buildings are going to be near water. And because that's where it all started. And invariably, you're going to find a mill street and a factory street, possibly a river street. And that's not by accident. That's just because there may not have been a factory there in 100 years, but it's still Factory Street. And this is a picture of where we're going to be starting the adventure tour that we're going to be doing in Colton. There we go. This is on the island of Edwards. This is the Edwards grist mill. And then later they added a generator to that, which was the first power in Edwards. The building's been gone since sometime in the 80s. But the road is still there. And if you get on the far side of that bridge and look over, you can still find the bull gear from the water wheel. It lays down there in the rocks. And it was kind of different than a lot of gears. The teeth were hard maple. So it was replaceable. And at least half the teeth are still in that. They're just up out of the weather enough that they're still there, which, it's been just eons since that water wheel had done anything. So, and this, I'm kind of proud of this picture. Now, I didn't take it, I acquired it, but this is the only picture I found. This is the Meyer Steel and Wire Company blast furnace, which if anybody's familiar with the Tule Pond Road, Twin Falls is right next to the road. That's the waterfall that you see right next to the road, and the road would be about where that square is. And this was a huge operation. You can still find lots of artifacts from it. The blast furnace is still there. You get down by the beach, they actually would make what were called pigs. The molten iron, after it was smelted, they would run it down, and they just dug holes in the sand and let it cool in it. And they would take these pigs, they'd load them up to send them out. And from the heat, a lot of that sand had turned to glass, and you can still find glass. Everything was powered by charcoal. And I found places where you can find piles of charcoal that you can reach in and still find it. All these years, it hasn't rotted. One of the odd things about this, okay, this is halfway up the Tule Pond Road, which is near nothing. And the nearest railroad was in DeKalb Junction. So they made their own railroad. And this was in the post-Civil War years, so iron was hard to come by. So they used maple rails. The whole railroad was wood instead of iron rails. And from what I've read, it didn't work very good. They use iron for a reason and not wood. And like so many things, only a few years into its existence, it caught fire and burned, and that was the end of it. And then Clarksboro pretty much ceased to exist after that. I've seen them up here. They've got blueprints of this, where it was going to be like 15 blocks they had surveyed off. This is going to be a small town in the wilderness. Before this, all there was a blockhouse where people could stop and spend the night. The Tully Pond Road basically was the stagecoach road from Canton to Cranberry Lake. And around here was about halfway. And it was a 2-day trip by stagecoach. Now we can go across it in half an hour, but you know, a different time. And what the water here was, it turned a giant bellows to force air for higher temperatures for the smelting process. But this is the only picture I've ever seen of the place. That's what's left of the blast furnace today. The Grass River, I've started to do a lot of exploring around that. And I spent an inordinate amount of time with maps. And I have old maps, new maps, and I logged everything out. And this was the furthest reaches I could find, southern reaches of the Grass River. And this is up and back of Horseshoe Lake, going off towards Graves Mountain. So I decided that I should go to the beginning of the Grass River, which a lot of my explorations are like that. It's nothing more than to say that I did it, but I want to see it for myself. So I decided, I believe it was Veterans Day, about 4 years ago, I decided to go do this. And my friend Harry here in the second row, I drafted him to go along with me. So we had a fine day of it. It turns out the source of this branch, the south branch of the Grass River, it saddles around. You can see the hillside there. That's Long Tom Mountain. And the whole thing is perforated with springs. And springs come out of the mountain with little rivulets that run down to this beaver pond. And I'm actually straddling the Grass River right there. You know, so you've seen the Grass River here in town. You know, it grows quite a bit. But that was a great day.
How far did you walk to get to that spot?
I think it was about 3 miles from where we had to park the car. There a good bunch of it you can walk in on a state road. It's behind the gate, but it's a a followable road. And then I did the rest with map and compass. So you're probably off the dirt road. You're probably 1.5 miles each way to get there. And then of course I had some extra because I was poking around on the mountain and stuff. And so were the bears. There was one I wanted to get up on one more notch. I couldn't find a way up it because it was all stone ledge. Finally, I found a nice little slot that I could get up, hands and knees. About halfway up, I find out it's a bear trail. Now I'd seen bear tracks, stumps tipped over and stuff because it's November. They're looking for everything to eat, which could have been me. Fortunately, it wasn't because I was armed with my stick. But no harm, no foul. But it's a really neat trip. You know, it's not super difficult, but you've kind of got to be familiar with map and compass work. I don't think you'd really have to work to get lost, but you could get where you didn't know where you were easy. Yes.
Grass River flow.
No, this is probably 30 miles above the Grass River flow. No, the bear never showed himself, but if he had, then my stick was going to be it. You know, 'cause by the time I got my Swiss Army knife out, that wouldn't have been any good. I don't know what I could have done, probably had been the corkscrew, maybe I poked him in the nose, but. Another one that I've done that I'm quite proud of is Colvin's Great Corner in Oswegatchie. That was actually a wood etching that he did. Verplank Colvin, which is kind of the father of Adirondack surveying. I don't know if anybody's familiar with him or not. But he recreated the lines of the Campbell survey from 1772. So it was over 100 years. He's going off from old maps and slashes on trees and blazes and stuff. And he actually finds the corner, which is a pretty big deal. I'll back it up. If you look right here, that boulder, they actually had chiseled an arrow into the boulder to point towards where the point was set. And in 1904, the state found fit to put a better marker there, a granite marker. And everything basically in northern New York, and every piece of property, your survey is based off from that point. I mean, so it's a very important thing. Up until like the 70s, you could drive a truck past there, people snowmobile past it. I've talked to people that rode bicycles there. When the state took the property over, they closed off all traffic to it. So the further you go, the deeper it gets. And I'm not going to say it's inaccessible, but you're going to work. When I started looking into this, I couldn't find any coordinates on it. I'm looking for notes. I can see my map, so I got an idea where it is. But you drive 5 miles back in the woods, then you're walking another 6 miles. And it's at the Herkimer County line, so you're in deep. And, you know, there, for part of it is a handicapped accessible trail, motor trail. The first time I went, this nice bridge was across there. Last fall, I had a fellow get a hold of me. He was a principal in Albany. He said, look, I really want to get this corner. I've been trying for 30 years to get there. He said, I've looked on the internet, and he says, literally, you're the only living person that has any link to getting to this. He said, there's one other guy that writes for the Adirondack Almanac that's done an article that cites my name in it, and he's tried 3 times and never got there. So he says, I really want to get there. Okay, how are you take me? So kind of screened him to make sure that I'm dealing with somebody that's up for the challenge. So we started off, it was the middle of November. The forecast was for it to stop raining at sunup. It was a lie. It never stopped raining. 3 years before I went there, there was this nice little bridge to cross. That's the bridge. And it only got worse from there. And that's about 5 miles in. So it was a wet, yucky day. But we made it. And I told the guy, I said, look, just know that if we do this, we're doing this. You know, we're not just going to walk back in, and if you see some mud, we're going to turn around. You know, so just be prepared. We're is gung ho. But that's my lovely wife from the first time we're there. And of the directions I had on this thing were literally cipher out the trails, because these are all old woods roads, but there's dozens of them that go off in different directions. Find the right one, and you're going to find a yellow birch tree with a stove door leaning against it. So I'm walking 6 miles, and that's what I've got to find. So after you get that far, somebody luckily had chiseled those arrows, that carved those in with a chainsaw. So now you have no trail. So I take a compass bearing from that, where those arrows look like they're going to me. You know, picked a tree that was identifiable, like 400 yards away, walked to that, get another compass bearing, picked a point, pulled there, and literally the stone is 15 feet from us. So it is. And I think back of it, it's like you walk 6 miles and you're looking for a stove door. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I've done it twice. But I had in my head for 2 or 3 years, I had to get there. And so sometimes that's the stuff I go through. Fortunately, my wife is a saint and she takes this well. Yeah.
The stone, is that at a corner of one of the counties?
The stone is Herkimer County on one side, St. Lawrence County in the other. But if you were to look at the map of the county, it's fairly straight. Then it takes an angle up to the northeast, and that's.
So it does mark a corner on one of the boundaries.
It's not actually a corner, but it's in the line between them. But it's the corner of the Taunton Hounsfield and the Macomb Purchase is what its significance is, more than the county.
Now, who controls that land? Is it state?
Yes. Yep, it's all state land now.
State keeps quiet.
Yeah, like you will find no mention of that anywhere in any state readings or anything.
What the Kai works for the county? What's the county's position on it? Do they have any interest or?
Oh, I no idea.
No idea. That's kind of sad. That's part of history.
It is.
And nobody with authority is showing an interest.
No, and I've gotten used to that. I've brought stuff. I had one guy, and I don't want to throw the DC under the bus, but there was an old lime kiln in Jayville, and I could find in their old management plans that they called to have this preserved as a piece of culture. Well, nothing had been done to it. So I'm emailing back and forth with a couple of guys from the DEC. I'm giving them coordinates, giving them pictures. They're just telling me there's nothing there. I'm like, but I've got pictures. There's nothing there. I simply wanted permission to go in, cut the trees off, right? People throwing garbage around, just preserve it a little bit. I wasn't looking for a dime from them or any manpower from them, but their position was it doesn't exist. So, it's unfortunate. New York State as a whole doesn't really have a lot of concern for things that should be preserved. Yeah.
One more question. When was that stone put up?
Believe 1907. Yeah.
What role is GPS when you're hiking? When you get to a place like this, do you determine what the Latin long is?
Yes. Now I go both ways. I'm carrying map and compass and pretty good with them, but I also have a thing called All Trails, which is a thing. I create my own map from maps. So my All Trails is recording what I'm doing. When I get there, then I can take all my lats and longs and have an exact bearing on it. And like with this, because with the All Trails, if you're not familiar with it, you can download the maps and everything, and you download them, and you don't need cell service. So it's like an electric map in your pocket that's completely independent of cell service. And because of such, you can actually make an old phone that you don't have service for work. I don't know how, but I do it on things. I'll put it in an old phone and just stash that in my pack. So I've got, a second source. So, I've taken, and this happens a lot where I'm taking modern technology and old technology and marrying them. Because the map I made on All Trails electronically was following a 1950s era topo map. So, it's kind of neat to be able to do that. I remember talking to a retired forest ranger, and back in the 70s, he was madder than Dickens about that. He was afraid because there were so many people going to that. He expected somebody to put a hot dog stand up there. That was his quote. Because he said, you know, I'm just afraid somebody's going to do something to it. There's just so many people. But you could drive an old, like a Jeep or something, you could have driven it there. And that was the late 70s. And now I'll bet there's not 10 people a year visit this thing. So it's a pretty important piece of history that's right in the middle of nowhere. But these are the kind of things that mean a lot to me. You know, there are people like to hike Mount Marcy, and God bless the 46ers. Just not my thing. I've done some, but to me, this is a much greater adventure. And the rock that I showed you that had the arrow pointed in it, carved in it, it's this one right here. You know, you can still find that carving right in the rock, which to me is, there's a lot of wow factor to me. You kind of got to be an outdoor nerd to find an arrow on a rock and think it's that cool. And I've walked 12 or 13 miles to get there, but that's what I do. Horseshoe Lake is another favorite of mine. This is the one that's on the backside of Tupper Lake. The Lowe family, which Lowe's Lake is named after, he moved up in here as a summer retreat, which was a thing in the late 1800s. Rich people would come and buy up big chunks of the Adirondacks for a little bit of nothing. And he started the Horseshoe Lake Forestry Company. Their big claim to fame was the maple syrup. They were the largest maple production place in the world at one time. And they've got a nice display of his stuff right back there. But all his stuff was bottled in these jars. I started researching. I met a fellow named Matt Thomas from California, who's an archaeologist who was also studying this. So we compared notes and stuff. And I don't know how many days of field I spent there, but we just constantly would find new things. A lot of the roads are old railroad tracks, but the Horseshoe Forestry Company was the original one. There was a big fire came through Sabatis up through there and pretty much burnt everything off for trees. And without any trees, there's not much point in having a maple syrup factory. So piece by piece, things started to get stalled off. And he died shortly after the fire. I'm thinking 1907, somewhere in there. But these are some of the places that came on afterwards. And some were bigger, some were smaller. But most of those I've gone to the places where they were. And finally, in 1985, the state purchased it. This was his, as he called, cottage. He had a bigger home on Lake Marion named after his wife. But that was his cottage. These are the same, those are the trees he planted in front of things today. So, and if you get in there, you can start finding artifacts, and there's some big stone walls and stuff. So there's still hints that he was there. Anybody got any idea what that could be? Nobody does. Along with his syrup production, he was one of the first to have the idea that you could sell bottled water. So he was selling bottled water, and he had a metal and a wooden cistern. And he piped them up to the shore and filled bottles and had a little elevator that went up the railroad tracks. For years, there was conjecture on where exactly all this was happening. Going back on old maps, found that this was just a stream coming through here. Now it's a beaver pond. But with another gal, that Mary Larman, who's very up on Horseshoe Lake, we spent a day in there and actually ended up in the water and found the pipelines coming from these to the shore. So, and along the way, we found that the railroad went further than was ever suspected. There was a lot of misinformation taken as gospel on Horseshoe Lake. One of the guys that was supposedly the expert on it, and what a lot of people believed as the truth on it, was there once. His grandfather worked, and he went there for a weekend when he was 12 years old. And in his 50s, he wrote a paper on it from his recollections as a preteen. So there was a lot of holes in what he said, including these are about 4 miles away from where he said they were. But so there was a lot of unraveling there. That was a workshop they had, and that's Lowe's Overlook up above it, which is a great hiking spot. This is it today. This is his original track coming from Horseshoe up to the Pine Pond Sugar Bush. And this is the road in today is on the same railroad. You know, 120 odd years apart. And this is Lowe's Overlook in the winter. You can just see the railroad there, which is now the Adirondack Scenic Railroad that's in fits and jumps trying to get a line going from there to Tupper Lake and back. They've had a lot of difficulties, and it's just, they've got a chore. I don't know if they're running yet. I know they have, but they lost some tracks a year ago to the flooding we had. So I don't really know what the overall status of that is. I mean, they've rehabbed the tracks, and it is possible for the train to travel on. Just on the other side of this, which I don't go there because it's really steep and a long ways down, but my buddy Harry has, Lowell Jr. has a commemorative plaque when he died in the 60s, just over the face of that ledge, and had his ashes spread there. That's the book that's back there. This is Matt Thomas. This is the ultimate guide to anything and everything Horseshoe. The guy was 10 years in the process of making this, I imagine, or more. And I've had the luxury of going to field with him a few times. You know, and he shared a lot with me, taught me a lot of things. The biggest thing he taught me was to not believe anything until you could prove it. And there was a lot of stuff when I was doing my chapter on this, I'm like, Matt, so this is what is commonly accepted, but my notes are not showing that exactly. You know, so he taught me a lot. He's invaluable help on this. Okay. And we talked a little bit about Colton before. On the 28th of July, we're going to do the history tour. It's going to start at the Colton Historical Society, where they're going to give a little talk about the logistics of it and everything. And then we're going to walk back to the foundation. Now, the building was like 400 feet long. And to put in perspective, if I can make this work the way I want it to, there's some guys standing on some rocks there. So you can get an idea of how massive this thing was. And but we're going to start at the History Center, have a talk about it, and then we're going to walk down to the foundations of this. You find the foundations. There's lots of trees that have grown up through the barrel hoops. There's just a lot of neat stuff to see. I mean, you're not going to see that, but you're going to see where it was and kind of get an idea of it. So it should be a good day. And that's all I've got to throw at you for today. So I hope I didn't bore you folks too much. If you've got any questions, feel free to hit me up, and we got some books here if anybody would like to buy one or have one signed and stuff. But as it says, thank you for putting up with me for an hour. And also a big thanks to Carlene for putting this all together. She, yeah. She's introduced some new blood to the place, and she's got some nice ideas that she's working towards, and I think it's a good time to move in that direction.
Thank you so much, Bill. Does anybody have any questions for Bill?
Can you repeat when you're having that sort of meeting?
Yes, July 28th at 2:00. We're gonna meet right at the Colton Historical Association.
We'll have, if you get our emails, and if you don't, you can add your email here. We'll add you to the list. We send them out about every other week. Next week, I think we'll be sending an email about that, and then we'll advertise it again, at least with all the full details. You do need to register, so when you call me, I can give you more information.
Yeah, it's about a mile round trip, and it's fairly easy going. I mean, it's off road, but it's not like you're climbing mountains or anything. I would suggest long pants because invariably around riverbanks like this, you can run into briars, poison ivy, whatever. But it's not like you're scaling a mountain or anything. Well, depends on how deep you want to get.
Just, I'll know how away he was a Katie walk.
All right.
I also wanted to mention, in case anyone doesn't receive our quarterly, Matt Thomas, who we mentioned, wrote a great article about Horseshoe Lake. We actually have some of these bottles on display right back there. So part one was in our spring quarterly last year, part two is in the summer. So we do have these available for sale if you want to read a lot more into the history of Horseshoe specifically. Any other questions?
So what's next for you?
Well, I've got a few different things I'm working on. Some of them are going to come a little harder than others. I've got a few kayak places I want to go. One of them that I want to go on it's actually trying to make this go. That's the middle branch of the Oswegatchie River, and there's a section that's just beautiful in there around the Colvin Corner Monument. But you can't get there from here. I've tried this to everybody coming from upstream. The fellows I've talked to said unless you are very comfortable with whitewater rafting, helmets, recovery crews, and the whole 9 yards, and only do it in the spring. That's the only time there's water enough to float a boat. Just don't go there because you're just not going to make it. And coming from the other end, there's never water enough to float a boat. So eventually I'm going to have to carry a boat in the 4 miles in there because I'm just not going to rest until I paddle this piece of water. It's just that nice. So again, that's one of these kind of goofy predicaments I get myself in that I just can't get away from. Was there? Yeah.
I was just gonna say, it's often thought that the Horseshoe Forestry Company was in the Tupper Lake area, but actually it's in the town of Colton.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Which is weird because it's St. Lawrence County and it's Colton, and a piece of it would have been in Piercefield as well. But it's just a few miles from Tupper Lake, so Tupper Lake really has as much to do with it as St. Lawrence County does, or more, but it really was St. Lawrence County. So it kind of gets forgotten because once you get to Tupper Lake, you're not thinking St. Lawrence County anymore. Your mindset is you're in Franklin County, but you drive 10 minutes and you go back into St. Lawrence County. Yeah.
There's a state highway off of what, I can't remember the.
Yes.
state highway that goes back to this network.
Yep, that's State Route 420. And, not 420,
Well, something close to them.
421.
Years and years ago.
Yeah, it used to be a very popular place, like the dumps. People used to go there and feed bears out the window of their car. And one of the things I discovered was that was a home for problem bears. All around the state, like if there was a park or something and they had bears that couldn't behave, they would live trap them. They took them to Horseshoe. And they did this for years, so they were all vagrant bears. These weren't just good local bears. These were bad bears. They were put there for a reason. Yes.
Years ago, friends of mine and I used to ride horses in the Adirondacks, and we took our horse trailer and we went on the Massawiki Road,
Mhm.
and we drove in pretty far. And then we were able to ride from different directions to Horseshoe Lake on the back of the barn.
Mhm.
And that was really amazing.
Yes, you can do that now with snowmobiles because they have an easement for that, because there's a pretty substantial stretch of private land in there. But,
We found some abandoned big house type building on the way through there. I don't know what it was.
yeah, there were several farmsteads through there through the years and stuff, and, you know,
It was interesting to do.
it is, and that's lovely country up in there. You know, someday I'd like to get through there, but, right now there's no easement for anything besides snowmobiles. But,
I'm not gonna do it again.
well, never say never, because I never thought I was going to the corner again, but there I was. Anything else? All right, well, thank you guys, appreciate it.